For 7 years, the boy touched his eyes. Every specialist said the same thing, nothing we can do. His father spent fortunes, threatened doctors, traveled across 3 kingdoms. They all shrugged. Then a widowed Omega in a medical clinic waiting room noticed something no one else did, and what he did next will leave you breathless. Welcome back, beautiful souls. If you're ready for this journey of impossible healing and unexpected love, hit subscribe. Tomorrow I'm bringing you another story that'll wreck you in the best way. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Now, let us begin. My name is Rowan. I'm 32 years old, an Omega, and I've been surviving since my mate died 4 years ago. The kind of surviving where you count coins before buying bread, where you work 2 jobs and still can't quite make rent, where your 10-year-old son learns to go without because he sees how hard you're trying. But I have something most people don't: medical training. I was studying to be a healer before everything fell apart, before my mate was killed in a border skirmish, before I had to drop out and take whatever work I could find to keep my son fed. I never expected that training to matter again. Never expected to use it for anything more than bandaging Finn's scraped knees or treating his colds with herbs I couldn't afford from the apothecary. I definitely never expected it to catch the attention of an Alpha King. The clinic waiting room was packed. It always was on free treatment days. The only time people like me could see a healer without selling everything we owned. I sat with Finn pressed against my side. Both of us tired from the walk across the city. My suppressants were wearing off. I could feel my Omega scent starting to leak through, drawing glances from the alphas in the room. I pulled my cloak tighter, trying to make myself smaller. Invisible. That's how Omegas like me survived, by not being noticed. Then the doors opened, everyone went silent. Not the comfortable kind of silence, the terrified kind. Alpha King Alaric stood in the doorway, tall, powerful, radiating authority that made every alpha in the room bare their neck in automatic submission. His guards flanked him, hands on weapons, eyes scanning for threats. And beside him, holding his hand, was a small boy, 7 years old maybe, dark hair like his father, delicate features, eyes that looked but didn't see. The king's son, Prince Elias. I'd heard the stories. Everyone had. The queen had died giving birth. The baby had been born blind. The king had spent 7 years searching for a cure, traveling to every kingdom, consulting every specialist, trying every treatment. Nothing worked, and here he was in a free clinic for the poor, because even kings run out of options eventually. The healer in charge rushed forward, bowing so low his forehead nearly touched the floor. "Your Majesty, we're honored. We'll see the prince immediately." The king's voice was cold. "You'll see him when it's his turn. We'll wait like everyone else." "But sire," the healer stammered, "we can't make you wait with commoners. My son is sick." The king's eyes were hard. "These people are sick. We wait our turn." He sat down across from me. The entire waiting room had stopped breathing. You didn't sit next to an Alpha King. You didn't share space with royalty. It wasn't done, but he was there, and his son was there, and I couldn't stop staring at the boy, because I'd seen that gesture before. The way Prince Elias touched his eyes, small hands pressing against his eyelids like he was trying to push something out, or push something in. My medical training kicked in. That wasn't the gesture of someone blind from birth. That was the gesture of someone in pain, someone whose blindness came from pressure, from blockage, from something fixable. My heart started racing. No, it couldn't be. 7 years, hundreds of specialists. They would have checked, they would have seen. But the boy touched his eyes again, and I saw him wince. Saw the tears he was trying to hide. Saw the suffering everyone else was too afraid to notice because you don't stare at princes. Finn tugged my sleeve. "Papa," he whispered, "why are you looking at them?" I tore my gaze away. "Sorry, baby, just thinking." But I couldn't stop thinking, couldn't stop seeing that gesture, couldn't stop my medical brain from cataloging symptoms, from remembering a case study from my training. A rare condition where pressure builds behind the eyes, where fluid accumulates, where blindness seems permanent but isn't, where a simple procedure could restore sight. The king was watching me now. His eyes were cold, assessing, dangerous. I'd been staring too long, had drawn his attention. I looked down quickly, submitted, showed no threat, but my mind was screaming, that boy, that prince. What if everyone had missed it? What if the answer was simple and they'd all been looking in the wrong place? An hour passed. 2. The king sat patiently, his son beside him. The boy never complained, never cried, just sat there touching his eyes, bearing pain with the stoicism of someone who'd learned that crying didn't help. My name was finally called. Rowan? The healer beckoned. I stood, taking Finn's hand. We walked past the king, past his son, and I felt it, that pull, that desperate need to say something, to do something. But he was royalty. I was no one, and you didn't approach an alpha king unless you wanted to die. We went into the examination room. The healer checked Finn quickly. Just a cold, rest and fluids, no charge since it was free day. Thank you, I said, we'll go. But as we left the examination room, I heard voices from down the hall. The king's voice, sharp with command, and a healer's voice, apologetic, defeated. Your Majesty, there's nothing we can do. The specialists in the capital, in the neighboring kingdoms, they've all examined him. The blindness is permanent. You must accept this. I will not accept it. The king's voice was deadly. There has to be something. Sire, with respect, you've tried everything. Perhaps it's time to focus on teaching the prince to adapt, to live with his condition rather than fighting it. Get out. The healer fled. I stood there, Finn's hand in mine, my medical training warring with my survival instincts. This wasn't my business, wasn't my place. I should leave, take my son home, forget what I'd seen, but that boy was suffering, and I knew what was wrong. Finn looked up at me. Papa, can we go home now? I stared down at my son, at his clear, seeing eyes, at the face that looked so much like his father's, his dead father who'd made me promise, before he deployed, that I'd always help people when I could, that I'd never let fear stop me from doing good. Stay here, I told Finn, right here, don't move. Papa, no. Finn grabbed my arm. That's the king, he's dangerous. I know, baby, but I have to try. I walked down the hall before I could change my mind, before common sense could stop me. The king stood alone now, his guards stationed outside. His son was still in the examination room, probably being checked by another healer. I knocked softly on the open door. The king turned, his eyes were red. He'd been crying, an alpha king, crying in an empty hallway because his son was suffering and he couldn't fix it. Get out, he said, his voice was rough. I don't need more people telling me there's no hope. I swallowed my fear. What if I told you there might be? He went very still. What did you say? Your son, the way he touches his eyes, the pain in his face. I've seen that before, in my medical training, before I had to drop out. You're not a healer. The king's voice was dangerous now. You're a commoner, an Omega. What could you possibly know that hundreds of specialists don't? Maybe nothing, I admitted, but maybe they all made the same wrong assumption, that his blindness was congenital, that it couldn't be fixed. Did any of them check for fluid buildup, for pressure behind the eyes? The king stared at me. They checked everything. Did they specifically check for idiopathic intracranial hypertension? It's rare, easy to miss if you're not looking for it. The symptoms match, the blindness, the way he touches his eyes, the pain. How do you know about pain? The king took a step closer. My son never complains, never cries. He doesn't have to, I said quietly. I can see it in his face. The way he flinches when light hits his eyes. The way he presses his palms against them like he's trying to relieve pressure. I have seen it before. In a patient during my training. A simple procedure fixed it. Drained the fluid, restored sight. The king was shaking now. If this is a lie, if you're giving me false hope, I'm not lying. My voice was steady. I'm a widowed Omega with a son to protect. Do you think I'd risk approaching you if I wasn't certain? We stared at each other. Alpha King and common Omega, power and desperation. Two fathers who'd both lost mates and would do anything for their children. What's your name? The king asked finally. Rowan. Come with me, Rowan. We're going to the Royal Hospital right now. And you're going to explain this condition to my doctors, and if you're wrong. His voice dropped. If you're wasting my time or giving me false hope, there will be consequences. I understand, but I wasn't wrong. I couldn't be wrong. because that boy deserved to see, and I'd rather die trying to help him than live knowing I'd walked away. The royal carriage was the most terrifying, beautiful thing I'd ever been in. Gilded walls, velvet seats, guards everywhere. Finn pressed against my side, eyes wide with fear. "Papa," he whispered. "What's happening?" "We're helping," I whispered back. "Trust me." Across from us, the king held his son. Prince Elias was quiet, confused, asking questions in sign language that his father answered patiently. The boy had learned to communicate without sound, without sight, had adapted to a world that had failed him. Not anymore. If I was right, if the specialists had missed it, this boy would see his father's face for the first time ever. The pressure of that realization made my hands shake. The royal hospital was chaos when we arrived. Word had spread that the king was bringing someone, some unknown Omega who claimed to know what was wrong with the prince. Healers lined the hallways, bowing, confused, terrified of what this meant. The king ignored them all. He went straight to the head healer's office, a woman named Magistra Alara, gray-haired, ancient, the most respected medical mind in the kingdom. "Alara," the king said without preamble, "this Omega says my son has idiopathic intracranial hypertension, that it's treatable, that everyone missed it." Magistra Alara looked at me. Really looked. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. She didn't dismiss me immediately, didn't laugh, just studied me. "Tell me your training," she said. "I spent 3 years at the Capital Medical Academy," I said, "before my mate died and I had to leave. I studied under Healer Cormac, specialized in rare conditions." "Cormac?" Alara's eyebrows rose. "That old bastard taught you?" "Yes, ma'am." She smiled. "Then you might actually know what you're talking about. Cormac doesn't waste time on idiots." She turned to the king. "When was Prince Elias last examined for IIH?" The king frowned. "I don't know. No one mentioned it specifically." "Because no one looked for it," Alara said grimly. "IIH is rare, especially in children. Most healers wouldn't think to check." She looked at me. "What made you suspect it?" "The way he touches his eyes, the pain he's trying to hide, the specific gesture of pressing his palms against the pressure points. I saw it during my training. A patient presented with the exact same symptoms. The moment we drained the excess cerebrospinal fluid, their vision returned." Alara nodded slowly. "We need to do a lumbar puncture. Check the pressure, if you're right." She looked at the king. "If this Omega is right, and we've missed this for 7 years, then every specialist who examined my son will answer for it," the king said coldly. "But first, we fix him." They took Prince Elias into an examination room. The king followed. So did I at his command. Finn waited outside with guards who looked at my son like they'd never seen a commoner child before. Magistra Alara was thorough. She examined the prince's eyes with instruments I hadn't seen since my training, tested his responses, measured his eye pressure. Then she performed the lumbar puncture, extracting spinal fluid and measuring the pressure. Her face went pale. The pressure reading was off the scale, dangerously high, high enough to cause blindness, high enough that the prince had been living in pain for years. She looked at me. "You were right. How in all the gods' names did everyone miss this?" "Because they stopped looking," I said quietly. "They saw blind and assumed it was permanent. No one checked for the simple explanation." Alara's hands were shaking. "We need to drain this immediately. Place a shunt to prevent buildup. The surgery is delicate but straightforward. If we do it now, within hours." "His sight could return," I finished. The king made a sound, something between a sob and a roar. He grabbed my shoulders. "If this works, if my son can see..." He couldn't finish. "It'll work," I said. "I promise. It'll work." The surgery took 3 hours. The king paced the entire time, wore a path in the marble floor. His guards stood silent, watching their monarch come apart. I sat with Finn, holding my son's hand, praying to every god I could name. "Please, please let this work. Don't let me be wrong. Don't let that boy suffer anymore." Magistra Alara emerged at sunset. Her face was tired but triumphant. "The procedure was successful," she said. "We placed a permanent shunt to regulate the pressure. There was significant damage from years of buildup, but she smiled. The optic nerves responded. Prince Elias can see. The king's legs gave out. He fell to his knees right there in the hallway, sobbed into his hands like a child. His guards pretended not to see. I stood, walked to him carefully, knelt beside him. Your Majesty, he's okay. Your son can see. Alaric looked at me. His face was wet, destroyed, rebuilt. You saved him, a stranger, a common Omega. You saved my son when everyone else failed. I just looked, I said. That's all. I just really looked at him. They let the king see his son an hour later. I stayed in the waiting room with Finn, giving them privacy, but I heard it, heard the moment Prince Elias opened his eyes and saw for the first time. Heard him gasp, heard him cry, heard him say in a rough, unpracticed voice, "Papa, is that you? Is that really you?" Heard the king break completely. Yes, yes, my son, it's me. Can you see me? You're so tall. The prince's voice was filled with wonder. And you have Papa's face, the one I touch, but I can see it now. I can see you. I pressed my face into Finn's hair and cried. Because that boy deserved this, deserved to see his father, deserved to have his suffering end. And somehow, impossibly, I'd been the one to do it. 3 days later, the king summoned me to the palace. Not a request, a command. Finn came with me because I refused to leave him behind. We were common people in a royal palace, and separation meant vulnerability. The throne room was massive, gilded, overwhelming. The king sat on his throne, crown on his head, every inch the monarch, but his eyes softened when he saw me. "Rowan," he said, "step forward." I did, pulling Finn with me. We knelt. It was protocol, expected. "Stand," the king said, "both of you. No one who saved my son kneels in my presence." We stood awkwardly. I had no idea what was happening. "The doctors confirmed it," Alaric said. "My son's vision is returning. Slowly. But returning. Within weeks he'll see as well as any child his age." He paused. "You gave my son the world. How do I repay that?" "You don't," I said quietly. "I didn't do it for payment. I did it because he needed help. Everyone wants something," the king said. "Name it. Money, land, title, anything within my power." I thought about our tiny apartment, about the jobs I worked, about how hard I'd been struggling, about the medical degree I'd never finish. "Let me complete my training," I said. I was 3 years into a 6-year program when my mate died. "If you want to repay me, pay for the rest. Let me become a healer, so I can help other children like your son." The king stared at me. "That's all? You saved the crown prince and you want education?" "I want to help people," I said. "I want to make sure other families don't suffer because no one looked closely enough. That's all I've ever wanted." Alaric stood, descended from his throne, walked until he was right in front of me. "You're remarkable," he said softly. "Do you know that? I'm just an Omega doing his best." "No." The king's eyes were intense. "You're extraordinary, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." He announced it that week. The Omega who saved the prince would attend the capital's finest medical academy, full scholarship, housing provided, everything paid for, and more. He offered a position in the royal household, medical advisor, someone to ensure the prince stayed healthy, someone to catch what others missed. I accepted, because I had no other options, because Finn deserved stability, because this was the opportunity of a lifetime. I didn't expect what came next. I didn't expect the king to visit me every day. At first it was about Elias, checking on his progress, asking medical questions, making sure his son was healing properly. But then the visits changed, became longer, more personal. He asked about my mate, about how he died, about what it was like to survive that loss. I asked about his queen, about Celeste, about the grief he carried. We were 2 widowed parents learning that shared pain could become something else, something softer, something that felt dangerously like connection. "Tell me about her," I said one evening. We were in the palace's gardens. Finn and Elias were playing nearby, the prince learning to see by playing games with my son. Alaric's voice was quiet. Celeste was brilliant, kind. She wanted to change the kingdom, make it better for everyone, especially Omegas. She died bringing Elias into the world. I never forgave myself. "It wasn't your fault. I'm Alpha King." My voice was bitter. I should have protected her. Should have known something was wrong. Should have. You can't control everything, I said gently. Not even kings can stop death. He looked at me. How did you survive it? Losing your mate? I didn't, I admitted. Not at first. I drowned for a year. Then Finn needed me, and I realized I could either drown or swim, so I swam. Badly, desperately, but I kept moving. You're stronger than I am. Number 1. I smiled sadly. I just had no other choice. You're the king. You had to be strong for an entire kingdom. I only had to be strong for one child. His hand found mine, squeezed gently. Thank you for saving my son, for seeing him, for everything. I squeezed back. Thank you for letting me. Weeks became months. My medical training resumed. I was older than the other students, but I didn't care. I was learning, growing, becoming the healer I'd always wanted to be. And the king, Alaric, he was always there. At first, I told myself it was about his son, about making sure Elias stayed healthy, but I knew better. I felt it too, the pull, the attraction, the way my omega instincts recognized his alpha nature and whispered mate. But he was a king, and I was common. It was impossible, until it wasn't. One night, 6 months after I'd saved Elias, Alaric found me in the palace library. I was studying, preparing for exams. He sat down across from me. Rowan, he said, I need to tell you something. I looked up. What's wrong? Is Elias okay? Elias is perfect, thanks to you, but he stopped, started again. I can't stop thinking about you, about us, about what this could be. My heart stopped. You're the king. I'm also a man, a widowed father who's been alone for 7 years, who's been drowning in grief. And then you appeared. You saved my son. You made me laugh again. You made me want again. We can't, I whispered. The kingdom, the court, they'd never accept it. I don't care. Alaric's eyes were fierce. I'm Alpha King. I decide what's acceptable, and I choose you. If you'll have me, I'm common, I'm broken, you're perfect. Alaric stood, came around the table, knelt in front of me. Rowan, will you let me court you? Properly, publicly, with the intention of making you my consort? I stared at him, this man, this king, this alpha who wanted me. Yes, I whispered, yes, I will. The court lost their minds. The kingdom erupted in scandal. How dare the king choose a common omega? How dare he elevate someone so far beneath him? But Alaric didn't care. He courted me openly, brought me to state dinners, introduced me to foreign dignitaries, made it clear that I was his choice, his future, and I fell in love with him, completely, desperately, because he saw me, not the poor omega, not the widower, not the commoner. He saw Rowan, the person, the healer, the father, the mate he'd been searching for. 1 year after I saved Prince Elias, Alaric asked me to marry him. Not just courting, not just consort, marriage, full royal recognition. I said yes. The wedding was beautiful. Finn stood beside me as my honor. Elias stood beside his father. 2 boys who'd become brothers, 2 families becoming one. And when Alaric kissed me, when the kingdom cheered, when I became the first common omega in history to marry a king, I thought about that day in the clinic. The moment I'd chosen to help instead of hide, that choice had changed everything. 5 years later, I stood in the palace gardens watching Elias and Finn chase each other through the flowers. Both boys were healthy, happy, loved. Alaric came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. Happy? Deliriously, I said. You? More than I ever thought possible. He kissed my neck. Thank you for saving my son, for saving me. I turned in his arms. Thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for making me believe I was worth choosing. You were always worth it, Alaric said. I just had to find you. We stood there, watching our sons play, our kingdom at peace, our hearts finally healed. I had 2 widowed parents who'd found love again in the most impossible way. And I realized something. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is look when everyone else has stopped looking. Is help when everyone else has walked away. Is choose love even when it seems impossible. That day in the clinic, I'd chosen to see a suffering child, and that choice had given me everything. My career, my family, my mate, my home, everything. Thank you for being part of this journey. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments if you'd have the courage to help someone when it was dangerous, when it was risky, when it went against everything you'd been taught. Next week, I'm bringing you a story about an Omega who discovers his fated mate is the enemy Alpha who killed his pack. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, the bravest thing is always compassion, always seeing, always choosing to help even when it's hard. That's where miracles begin. That's where love starts. That's everything that matters. But before that perfect ending, there was struggle. Real struggle, the kind that tested everything we'd built. The court didn't just disapprove, they actively fought against our union. Noble alphas who'd hoped to marry the king. Families who saw me as a threat to the traditional order. Counselors who believed a common Omega couldn't possibly be worthy of the crown. 3 months after Alaric proposed, the High Council demanded an audience. I stood beside him in the throne room, wearing clothes that still felt too fine, too expensive for someone like me. 12 council members sat in their designated seats, faces grave. Lord Thaddeus spoke first. He was old money, old power, old prejudices. Your Majesty, he began, we must address this proposed marriage, for the good of the kingdom. Alaric's voice was cold. I'm listening. With respect, sire, you cannot marry a common Omega. The position of royal consort requires someone of noble birth, someone trained in courtly duties, someone who understands politics and diplomacy. Rowan understands compassion, Alaric said. He understands healing. He saved my son when every noble-born specialist failed. That's worth more than any bloodline. But the precedent, another council member interjected. If you marry below your station, it sends a message that class no longer matters, that anyone can aspire to royal status. Good, Alaric said flatly. Maybe that's exactly the message we need. The council erupted. Voices rising, arguing, protesting. I stood there, silent, feeling their contempt like a physical weight. Lord Thaddeus held up his hand for silence. Your Majesty, we propose a compromise. Take Rowan as your companion. Give him a title, a stipend, a place in the palace. But don't marry him, don't make him consort. The kingdom isn't ready for that. I am ready, Alaric said, and I'm the king. My decision is final. Then we must call for a vote of no confidence. The words hung in the air like a threat. A vote of no confidence could force the king to abdicate, could strip him of his crown, could destroy everything. Alaric's face went white. You would threaten me? Over this? We would protect the kingdom, Lord Thaddeus said. Even from you, sire. That night, Alaric paced his chambers while I sat on the edge of his bed, watching him come apart. They'll force me to choose, he said, the crown or you. Choose the crown, I said quietly. Elias needs his father to be king. The kingdom needs you. I need you. Alaric stopped pacing, looked at me with desperate eyes. I've been alone for 7 years, Rowan. Dead inside. You brought me back to life. I can't lose that. Can't lose you. You won't lose me, I promised. I'll stay, as your companion, as Elias's healer. I don't need a title, I just need you. That's not enough. Alaric knelt in front of me. I want to marry you. Want the world to know you're mine. Want. I cupped his face. Sometimes love means compromise. If being your companion instead of your consort keeps you on the throne, I'll take it. I'll take any version of us that lets us be together. But it wasn't that simple. The council's threat had emboldened the nobility. Suddenly, everywhere I went in the palace, I felt their disdain. Servants who'd been kind became cold. Guards who'd nodded in greeting looked through me. At state dinners, nobles refused to sit near me. One evening, I was walking through the palace gardens when I heard voices. I stopped, hidden by a hedge. He's corrupting the king, a woman's voice said, making him weak, making him forget his duty. The boy should have stayed blind, a man replied. Then that Omega would never have had access, would never have wormed his way into His Majesty's bed. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. They thought I was using Elias, using a child's suffering to gain power. Do you think the king truly loves him? The woman again. Or is it just gratitude? Does it matter? Either way, he's a threat. The man's voice dropped. There are ways to deal with threats. I ran, back to my chambers, locked the door, sat on the floor with my back against it, shaking. They were planning something to remove me, to get rid of the common Omega who dared to rise above his station? I should have told Alaric, should have warned him, but I was terrified that if I told him he'd do something rash, would hurt someone, would prove the council right that I made him weak. So I stayed silent and tried to be more careful, more invisible. But the threats escalated. Letters appeared under my door, anonymous, threatening. Some called me names, others threatened Finn. A few promised I'd regret the day I'd approach the king. I burned them all, told no one, until the night someone tried to poison me. It was at a state dinner, a formal event where I had to attend as Alaric's companion. I sat beside him, wearing ceremonial robes that marked me as belonging to the king. The first course was served. I took a bite of the soup. Within minutes, my throat started closing. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. Alaric noticed immediately. "Rowan, what's wrong?" I couldn't answer, couldn't speak, just clutched at my throat, fighting for air. Chaos erupted. Healers were summoned. I was carried out of the dining hall, gasping, dying. They forced me to drink charcoal, pumped my stomach, fought the poison ravaging my system. I survived, barely. When I woke, Alaric was there. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. His face was gray, his eyes red. "Who did this?" His voice was deadly. "Who poisoned you?" "I don't know," I whispered. My throat was raw. "Someone at the dinner, someone who wanted me gone." Alaric's hands became fists. "I'll find them. I'll destroy them. Don't." I grabbed his hand. "Please. If you start executing nobles, you prove them right. That I make you reckless. That I'm dangerous to the kingdom. I don't care. I do." Tears burned my eyes. "I don't want to be the reason you become someone you're not. Someone cruel. Someone they can justify removing." Alaric's face crumpled. "I almost lost you. I can't. I won't survive that. Not again." "Then we have to be smart," I said. "We have to prove I'm worthy, not through your protection, through my own actions." "How?" I had an idea. Dangerous, potentially disastrous, but it was the only way I could think of to change hearts and minds. "Let me open a clinic," I said, "here in the capital. Free healing for everyone. Noble and common alike. Let me show them I'm not trying to take power. I'm trying to give service." Alaric stared at me. "You almost died tonight, and you want to work harder? I want to show them who I am, what I value. Maybe if they see me helping their people, they'll understand." It took weeks to organize, but Alaric gave me space in the palace grounds, a building that had been storage. We converted it into a clinic, open to everyone, no fees, no appointments, just help for anyone who needed it. The nobles mocked it at first, called it a vanity project, a desperate attempt to buy approval. But then their servants started coming, then their merchants, then their distant relatives, and I helped them all, treated fevers, set broken bones, delivered babies. All worked 18-hour days until my hands shook and my vision blurred from exhaustion. Finn helped me, my 10-year-old son, organizing supplies, greeting patients, learning healing alongside his studies. He was proud of what we were doing, proud of making a difference. Slowly, attitudes started shifting. Nobles who'd sneered at me began nodding and greeting. Servants smiled again. Guards joked with me while on duty. Lord Thaddeus himself came to the clinic one day. His granddaughter was sick, high fever, convulsions. The palace healers couldn't break it. He stood in my doorway, pride and desperation warring on his face. "Please," he said, voice breaking, "save her." I worked for 6 hours, used everything I'd learned, every technique, every remedy. And finally, the fever broke. The little girl opened her eyes and asked for her grandfather. Lord Thaddeus wept. He fell to his knees in front of me. "I was wrong, about you, about everything. You're not trying to take power, you're trying to give help. I'm sorry, for all of it. I'm so sorry, I helped him up. She's okay, that's all that matters." He looked at me with new eyes. "You love him, the king. You truly love him, more than anything, and he loves you." Lord Thaddeus nodded slowly. Perhaps I was the fool for not seeing it sooner. The next High Council meeting was different. Lord Thaddeus spoke first. "Your Majesty," he said, "I move that we formally approve your marriage to Rowan, that we recognize him as your chosen consort, that we welcome him into the royal family with full honors." The council murmured. Some nodded. A few still looked uncertain. But the vote passed, 12-0. Alaric's hand found mine under the table, squeezed so hard it hurt. But it was the good kind of hurt, the kind that meant we'd won. The wedding was planned for spring, 6 months away. Time to prepare, time to let the kingdom adjust, time for me to finish my medical training. But there was one more obstacle I hadn't anticipated: Celeste's family. The Queen's parents had never approved of their daughter marrying Alaric, thought he was too dangerous, too involved in the darker aspects of ruling. When Celeste died, they'd blamed him, cut off contact, refused to acknowledge Elias. Now they heard the king was remarrying, and they returned to demand custody of their grandson. They filed a legal petition, claimed Alaric was unfit to raise Elias, that the boy needed a proper home, a stable environment. Not a palace with a father who was marrying someone so far beneath his station. The hearing was brutal. Celeste's mother testified about how Alaric had changed after becoming king, become colder, more ruthless, less the man her daughter had loved. Her father talked about Elias, about how the boy had suffered, been blind for years, all because Alaric had been too proud to accept there was no cure. Their lawyer painted me as an opportunist, someone who'd used a sick child to seduce a desperate father. I sat there, listening to them destroy me, destroy Alaric, try to take Elias away. Then it was our turn. Alaric testified first, spoke about his love for his son, about how every decision he'd made was to protect Elias, to give him the best life possible. He talked about me, about how I'd saved Elias when everyone else had given up, about how I'd opened a clinic, given my time freely, showed compassion to everyone who needed it. Then Magistra Alara testified, explained the medical details, how specialists had missed the diagnosis, how I'd caught it, how Elias would have suffered permanently if not for me. But the moment that changed everything was when they called Elias himself. The prince walked into the courtroom with Finn beside him. His vision was perfect now, clear, strong. He looked around at everyone with those seeing eyes. The magistrate spoke gently. "Prince Elias, your grandparents want you to live with them. Would you like that?" Elias looked at his grandparents, then at me, then at his father. "No," he said clearly. "I want to stay with my papa, and with Rowan." The magistrate nodded. "Why?" "Because Rowan saved me," Elias said. "Not just my eyes, me. He saw me when I was suffering. He helped when everyone else said it was impossible. He's kind and smart, and he makes Papa smile. And," the boy's voice wavered, "and I don't want to lose another parent." Celeste's mother made a wounded sound. "We're your family." "You left," Elias said, "when I was born. You blame Papa for Mama dying. You never visited, never sent letters, never checked if I was okay. Rowan checks every day. Rowan helps me with lessons. Rowan tucks me in at night. Rowan is more family than you've ever been." The courtroom was silent. The magistrate looked at Elias's grandparents. "I see no grounds to remove Prince Elias from his father's custody. This petition is denied. We won." But it felt hollow, because a family had been broken, and even winning couldn't fix that. Outside the courthouse, Celeste's mother stopped us, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said to Alaric, to Elias, to me. "I'm sorry for all of it, for blaming you, for leaving, for trying to take him. She sobbed, "I just miss my daughter, and I wanted to protect her son the way I couldn't protect her." Elias walked to his grandmother, hugged her. She broke down completely, held her grandson and cried. "You can visit," Elias said, "if you want. You can visit and get to know me, really know me, not just take me away." "We'd like that," his grandfather said quietly, "if His Majesty allows it." Alaric nodded. Family is important, even when it's complicated. They left. And I realized something. Sometimes healing wasn't about fixing everything. Sometimes it was about making space for pain and love to coexist, for broken things to exist alongside whole things, for families to be messy and complicated and still be families. The wedding was beautiful, held in the palace gardens in spring, flowers everywhere, the entire kingdom invited. I wore white ceremonial robes. Alaric wore his crown. Elias and Finn stood beside us as honor attendants. When the officiant asked if I would take Alaric as my mate, my king, my partner for life, I said, yes. When he asked Alaric the same, the king's voice was strong. Certain? Yes. Forever yes. We kissed, the kingdom cheered, and I became the first common-born Omega consort in history. 10 years later, I stood in that same garden, watching Elias and Finn, now young men, arguing about something trivial, watching Alaric laugh at their antics. We'd had more children, 3 more, all of them running around the garden, filling the space with noise and life. Alaric found me there, wrapped his arms around me from behind. Happy? Always, I said. You? Beyond measure. He kissed my neck. Thank you, for that day in the clinic, for being brave, for seeing Elias, for choosing us. Thank you for choosing me back. We stood there, watching our family, our kingdom at peace, our hearts full. And I thought about that scared Omega in the clinic waiting room, the one who almost walked away, the one who thought he had nothing to offer. I wished I could tell him that brave moment, that choice to help, that decision to see a suffering child. It would change everything, give him everything, become everything, all because he chose compassion over fear, chose helping over hiding, chose to really look when everyone else had stopped looking. That was the miracle, not the healing itself, but the choice to try. Thank you for being part of this journey from beginning to end. If this story moved you, you know what to do. Subscribe, share. Let others know that sometimes the bravest thing is the simplest thing, seeing someone who's suffering, helping when it's risky, choosing compassion when it's dangerous. Drop a comment about a time you chose to help when it was hard, when it was scary, when you didn't know if it would work. I want to hear your stories, your moments of courage. Until next time, remember, every miracle starts with someone brave enough to look, to really look, to see past what everyone else has accepted, to find the simple answer everyone missed. Be that person, choose compassion, change everything. But there was one more chapter before peace truly settled. One more revelation that would test everything they'd built. 2 months after the wedding, a letter arrived, hand-delivered by messenger, sealed with wax bearing a crest Alaric recognized immediately, the Royal Medical Academy, the institution that trained every healer in the kingdom, the organization that had certified every specialist who'd examined Elias. Alaric opened it in his study. Rowan was teaching a class at his clinic. The children were at lessons. He was alone when he read the words that made his blood freeze. Your Majesty, the letter began, we write regarding concerns raised by several former Academy members about the treatment of Prince Elias. An internal investigation has revealed irregularities that require your immediate attention. Alaric's hands tightened on the parchment. The letter continued. Our investigation discovered that Prince Elias's condition was identified by 3 separate specialists during examinations conducted between his 2nd and 5th years of life. All 3 noted the presence of idiopathic intracranial hypertension in their private records. None reported these findings to you. Further investigation revealed these specialists were part of a coordinated scheme. They deliberately withheld diagnosis and treatment to maintain your patronage. The longer Prince Elias remained blind, the more consultations you would seek, the more experimental treatments you would fund, the more money would flow into their practices and research grants. We estimate you spent approximately 15 million gold crowns on treatments and consultations that were never intended to succeed. The Academy takes full responsibility for failing to oversee these members adequately. We have stripped all 3 of their medical licenses and referred them to criminal prosecution. However, we understand this cannot undo the 7 years of suffering inflicted upon your son. Alaric set the letter down. His hands were shaking, not with rage, with something colder, something more dangerous. Rowan found him an hour later, still sitting in his study, the letter on his desk. What's wrong? Rowan asked, closing the door. Alaric handed him the letter without speaking. Rowan read. His face went pale, then gray, then something harder than stone. They knew, Rowan whispered. For 5 years they knew. And they said nothing. They said he was incurable. Alaric's voice was flat. They took my money. They took my hope. And they left my son blind because it was profitable. Who were they? Rowan asked. The specialists. Do you have names? Alaric pulled out another document. The Academy had included a full list. 3 names, 3 doctors he'd trusted with his son's life. Dr. Matthias Crane, head of ophthalmology at the Royal Hospital, the first specialist he'd consulted when Elias was 2. Dr. Helena Voss, international expert on rare eye conditions. She'd flown in from the Northern Kingdoms and charged 50,000 gold for a week of consultations. Dr. Soren Blake, experimental treatment specialist, the one who'd convinced Alaric to try dangerous procedures that had no chance of working. All 3 had known. All 3 had lied. "What are you going to do?" Rowan asked carefully. Alaric looked at him. "What would you do?" "Debin, I'd want them to face justice, real justice, not just losing their licenses, prison, public exposure, making sure they can never hurt another family." But, Rowan sat down across from him. "Revenge won't give Elias back those 7 years. It won't erase what happened, and it might consume you in a way that hurts our family, more than it hurts them. So, I do nothing? Let them walk away?" "No." Rowan leaned forward. "You make sure what they did becomes public knowledge. You support the prosecution. You testify if needed, but you don't let rage destroy what we've built. You don't become someone your son would fear." Alaric closed his eyes. "I want to hurt them, for what they did, for what they took from him. I know, but Elias is happy now, safe, loved, seeing. Don't let their evil turn you into someone he won't recognize." The trial happened 4 months later, public, highly publicized. The entire kingdom watched as 3 prominent doctors were exposed for deliberately withholding treatment from the crown prince for profit. Alaric testified, stood in the witness box, and described 7 years of desperate searching, of watching his son suffer, of trusting these people with everything and being systematically betrayed. The courtroom was silent when he finished. Then Rowan testified, explained how simple the diagnosis had been, how obvious the treatment, how any competent doctor should have caught it, how 3 specialists had looked at a suffering child and seen a revenue stream instead. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts: medical malpractice, fraud, conspiracy. Each doctor received 20 years in prison and complete financial ruin. But the moment that mattered most came after the sentencing. Dr. Crane approached Alaric outside the courthouse. He was shackled, surrounded by guards, but he'd asked for 1 moment to speak. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice was broken. "I'm sorry, for all of it. I know that means nothing, but I'm sorry." Alaric stared at him. "You stole 7 years from my son. Apologies can't return those." "I know." Crane's eyes filled with tears. "I told myself I was doing important research, that the money you paid funded work that would help thousands. But the truth is," he stopped, "the truth is, I was greedy, and I let a child suffer for it. I'll regret that until I die." Alaric felt Rowan's hand find his, felt the gentle pressure that meant breathe, don't let rage win. "I hope you do," Alaric said quietly. "I hope you think about my son every day for the rest of your life. I hope you remember that you had the power to help him and chose money instead, and I hope that knowledge destroys you the way it almost destroyed me." Crane nodded, accepted it. Then the guards led him away. That night, Alaric sat with Elias in his bedroom. His son was reading, his eyes moving across the page, no longer struggling, no longer limited. "Papa?" Elias looked up. "Are you okay? You seem sad." Alaric pulled him close. "Just thinking about everything we've been through, everything it took to get here. Are you angry? About the doctors?" "I was," Alaric admitted. "But now I'm just grateful. Grateful for Rowan. Grateful that you can see. Grateful that we found our way to happiness even though bad people tried to stop us." "Me too." Elias hugged him. "And Papa?" "Even if I'd stayed blind, I'd still be happy. Because you never stopped loving me. You never gave up. That's what mattered." Alaric's eyes burned. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from you, and from Rowan." Elias smiled. "He says the bravest thing is choosing love over anger, choosing to build instead of destroy. He's right. So you're not going to be angry anymore?" "No." Alaric kissed his son's forehead. "I'm going to be grateful. And I'm going to make sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else." "How?" "We're going to change the laws, make sure doctors can't profit from keeping patients sick, make sure families like ours get the truth, not lies designed to drain their resources." That's good. Elias settled against him. That's what Mama would want, right? For you to make things better? Yes, that's exactly what she'd want. 10 years later, the reforms Alaric had pushed through had transformed medical practice throughout the kingdom. Mandatory second opinions, public disclosure of treatment alternatives, severe penalties for withholding diagnosis. The Celeste Laws, they were called, named for the queen who died, whose son had suffered, whose husband had refused to let that suffering be meaningless. Rowan ran the kingdom's largest teaching hospital now, training a new generation of healers who understood that compassion was as important as competence, that seeing patients as people, not profit, was the foundation of good medicine. Elias was 17, studying to be a healer himself, wanting to help children who suffered like he had, wanting to make sure no family endured what his had. Finn was 20, working in the Royal Guard, and protective of his younger siblings, fiercely loyal to the family that had become his through choice rather than blood. And the younger children, 3 more by now, ran through the palace gardens, filling spaces that had once been silent with noise and laughter and life. Alaric stood on the balcony watching them, Rowan beside him. "Happy?" Rowan asked. "Always asking." "More than I ever thought possible," Alaric said. "You saved my son, but you also saved me. You saved yourself. I just gave you a reason to try." They stood there, watching their family, their kingdom at peace, their hearts finally whole. And Alaric thought about that day in the marketplace, the Omega who'd risked everything to help a stranger's child, the moment that had changed everything. Sometimes miracles came in the most unexpected forms. Sometimes they looked like a widowed Omega with kind eyes and brave hands. Sometimes they happened in public markets when someone chose to see suffering and couldn't walk away. That day had given him everything: his son's sight, a mate who understood loss and healing, a family rebuilt from broken pieces, a kingdom reformed by tragedy turned into purpose. And standing there, holding Rowan's hand, watching their children play, Alaric finally understood what Celeste had been trying to tell him as she died. Love doesn't end, it transforms. It finds new shapes, it builds new families from the ruins of old ones, it endures. Thank you for being part of this journey from beginning to end. If Rowan's courage moved you, if this story reminded you that sometimes the bravest thing is simply choosing to help when it's hard and scary and dangerous, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to remember that miracles start with compassion, that seeing someone suffering and choosing to act can change everything. Drop a comment about a time you chose to help when it was risky, when you saw something everyone else had missed, when you made the hard choice to care. I want to hear your stories, your moments of courage. Until next time, remember, the best miracles aren't flashy or dramatic. They're simple, they're seeing, they're caring, they're refusing to walk away from suffering just because it's easier, safer, more convenient. Be the person who stops and looks, who really looks, who sees what everyone else has accepted or ignored, who chooses compassion over comfort. That's how you change the world, one child at a time, one act of courage at a time, one choice to help at a time. Be brave, be kind, be the miracle someone desperately needs. Years later, when people asked Rowan about that day in the marketplace, he'd always say the same thing. "I didn't plan to be brave, I just couldn't look away." But Finn remembered it differently. He'd been there. He'd seen his father's hands shake, seen the fear war with compassion, seen the moment his papa chose to risk everything for a stranger. "Papa," Finn said one evening, when he was 25 and Rowan was training him as a healer, "tell me the truth. Were you scared that day in the marketplace?" Rowan looked up from the medical text they were reviewing. "I was terrified." "Then why did you do it?" "Because sometimes being terrified is less important than being needed. That boy was suffering, and I knew how to help him. Everything else, my fear, the danger, the risk, none of that mattered as much as a child in pain." Finn studied his father, the gray in his hair now, the lines around his eyes from years of hard work and laughter, the steady hands that had saved so many lives. "You taught me that," Finn said quietly. "That day, you taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to help anyway." "Is that why you became a healer?" Finn smiled. "I became a healer because I watched you see people, really see them, not their status or power or money, just their suffering. And I wanted to be like that. I wanted to see people the way you do. Rowan's eyes filled. I'm proud of you. So proud. I learned from the best. That night, Rowan found Alaric in their private chambers. The king was reading reports, always working, always carrying the kingdom's weight. Do you ever think about that day? Rowan asked. The marketplace? Alaric looked up. Every day, every single day. What do you think about? How close I came to losing everything. Alaric set down his papers. If you hadn't stopped, if you'd walked away like any sane person would have, Elias would still be blind. I'd still be drowning in grief. Our family wouldn't exist. You would have found another way, another healer. No. Alaric stood, walked to where Rowan sat. I'd been searching for 7 years, spent fortunes, threatened countless people, and I'd found nothing because I was looking in the wrong places, looking for expensive solutions, complicated treatments, prestigious specialists. And I was just a widowed Omega buying vegetables. You were exactly what we needed. Alaric cupped Rowan's face, someone who looked at my son and saw a child suffering, not a prince, not a revenue stream, just a boy who needed help. I almost didn't, Rowan admitted. I almost took Finn and walked away. I was so scared of you. What changed your mind? Elias. The way he touched his eyes, the pain in his face that everyone else was ignoring. Rowan's voice dropped. I saw my son in him, saw every child who'd ever suffered while adults looked away, and I just couldn't be one more person who did nothing. That's why I love you. Alaric kissed him softly. That's why our kingdom loves you, because you see people. You make everyone feel like they matter, like their suffering is important, like someone cares. They sat together in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other in the most impossible circumstances. Two families merged through trauma and healing and choice. Outside their window, the capital city sparkled with lights, thousands of people living their lives, some suffering, some healing, all connected by the reforms that had started with one Omega's courage in a marketplace. The Celeste laws had changed everything, but more than that, they'd changed the kingdom's heart, reminded people that compassion mattered, that seeing suffering and choosing to help was more important than wealth or power or status. Do you think Celeste would approve? Rowan asked. Of us? Of everything? Alaric smiled. She always said the kingdom needed more kindness, more people who chose love over fear. I think she'd be thrilled that I found someone who embodies that. And Marcus? What would he think? Rowan thought about his first mate, the soldier who taught him to be brave, who'd made him promise never to let fear stop him from doing good. He'd be proud, Rowan said. He'd tell me I did exactly what he would have done, that I honored his memory by living the way he lived, by choosing to help even when it was dangerous. Then we're both exactly where we're meant to be. Yes? Rowan leaned against him. We are. The next morning, Rowan taught his usual class at the hospital. Young healers learning not just technique, but philosophy. Learning that medicine was about people, not just procedures. Today we're going to talk about observation, Rowan said, about really seeing your patients. He told them about that day in the marketplace, about a blind prince and a widowed Omega, about how every specialist had missed a simple diagnosis because they'd stopped looking, stopped seeing. The greatest tool you have isn't your knowledge or your skill, Rowan said. It's your compassion, your willingness to see past the obvious, to look at a patient and ask not just what's wrong medically, but what are they experiencing? What are they trying to tell me? What has everyone else missed? A young student raised her hand. But, Professor Rowan, what if we're wrong? What if we see something and we're mistaken? Then you're wrong. Rowan smiled. But that's better than not looking at all. That's better than walking past someone suffering because helping them is inconvenient or uncomfortable or scary. Another student spoke up. The Queen's laws require us to document everything now. Multiple opinions, full disclosure. Doesn't that mean we won't miss things anymore? The laws help, Rowan said, but they're not enough. Laws can't make you care, can't make you see patients as people instead of problems. That's something you have to choose. Every day, every patient, every time. How do we do that? Rowan thought about Alaric, about Elias, about that moment in the marketplace when everything changed. You remember why you became a healer? He said. You remember that every patient is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's love. You remember that behind every diagnosis is a person who's scared and hurting and hoping you can help. And you choose to see them, really see them, even when it's hard. The students were quiet, absorbing this. That's the lesson, Rowan said, not the medical technique, not the procedures. Those are important, but they're not everything. What matters is the choice to care, the choice to see, the choice to help even when it costs you something. One student, barely 18, raised a trembling hand. "Professor, I'm terrified I'll make mistakes, that I'll hurt someone or miss something important." "You will," Rowan said gently. "We all do. I've made mistakes. I've missed things. I've had patients I couldn't save. But the mistakes that haunt me aren't the medical ones. They're the times I didn't try, the times I looked away because trying felt too risky or too hard. So the student struggled for words. We just keep trying, keep caring, even when we fail, especially then." Rowan's voice was firm, because caring isn't about perfection, it's about showing up, about seeing someone suffering and refusing to look away. That's all, that's everything. After class, the young student approached him privately. "Professor," she said, "I grew up in the slums. My family couldn't afford healers when my brother got sick. He died because no one would see us. No one cared about poor kids. I'm sorry, don't be." The student's eyes were fierce. "It's why I'm here, why I'm studying, because I remember what it felt like to be invisible, to watch my brother suffer while rich people's children got the best care. And I swore that if I ever became a healer, I'd never turn anyone away, never make anyone feel like their suffering didn't matter." Rowan felt tears burn his eyes. "That's exactly right. That's exactly what this kingdom needs." "You did that, didn't you?" the student asked. "You were the one who helped Prince Elias, who stopped in a marketplace and risked everything. I was, but I'm not special. Anyone could have done what I did. The only difference is that I chose to look, chose to care, and that's something anyone can do." The student nodded, determination settling over her face. "Then that's what I'll do. Every patient, every time. I'll see them, really see them." "Good." Rowan squeezed her shoulder. "That's how we change the world. One patient at a time. One act of compassion at a time." That evening, Rowan walked home through streets he'd once feared, through a city that had become his. Merchants called greetings. Parents brought children with scraped knees to his clinic. Guards nodded respectfully. He was royal consort now, had wealth and title and power he'd never imagined. But what mattered most was simpler. He'd helped a child, and that choice had rippled outward, changing laws, changing hearts, changing the very fabric of how this kingdom understood medicine and compassion. At home, Elias and Finn were teaching the younger children to read. All of them together, a family built from impossible circumstances. Alaric found him in the doorway, watching. "What are you thinking about?" the king asked. "About how different everything could have been," Rowan said, "if I'd walked away that day, if I'd chosen safety over courage. But you didn't. No, I didn't, and I'd make the same choice again, every time, even knowing the danger, the risk, especially knowing that. Because some things are worth risking everything for. Some children are worth being brave for." They stood together, watching their family, their kingdom at peace. And Rowan thought about all the children who'd been helped because he'd stopped that day, all the families saved because laws had changed, all the healers training to see patients as people. One choice, one moment of courage, one decision to help a suffering child. That's all it took to change everything. Thank you for staying until the very end, for witnessing this journey from marketplace to palace, from strangers to family, from suffering to healing. If this story touched you, reminded you that your choices matter, that your compassion can change lives, hit subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to remember that being brave doesn't mean being fearless. It means choosing to help anyway. Comment below about a time you saw someone suffering and chose to help. So about a moment when you risked something to do the right thing. I want to celebrate your courage, your moments of seeing, your choices that mattered. Until next time, be the Omega in the marketplace. Be the person who stops and looks, who really sees. Who chooses compassion over comfort, courage over convenience, love over fear? That's how miracles happen. That's how kingdoms change. That's how we save each other, one brave choice at a time.